Hi again. A.D. Robertson, page 80 of the Divinity of Christ in the Gospel of John. This is on chapter 8 of the Gospel of John. The Feast of Tabernacles is over, and the crowds from abroad go home, but Jesus lingers on a few days. The Pharisees are full of resentment at the turn of affairs and very inflammable and explosive. Jesus is again in the temple when the Pharisees are. He probably said, "I am the light of the world," on purpose for them to hear. That's John 8, verse 12, by the way. This is precisely what the Pharisees thought that they were, though they would hardly say it in plain terms. But such a claim from Jesus, who was taboo in Pharisaic circles, was intolerable. They were quick to take Jesus up and to accuse him of simply praising himself. His bare word was not acceptable. We're bound to admit the technical justice of this retort of the Pharisees. If Jesus is only a man, it is well nigh impossible to justify such language in his mouth. The claim is universal for all the world and for all time. He doesn't say, "I am the light of Israel." He says, "I am the light of the Jews." It is only consonant with the fact of the deity of Jesus and the revelation of this truth on the part of Jesus, and thus follows naturally without the conceit which would otherwise be inevitable. Jesus replies that he can speak the truth all by himself, but admits their right to demand confirmation, which he produces in the witness of his Father. That's 8, verses 14 to 18. At this turn, the Pharisees throw in his face the charge of being a bastard. "Where is thy father?" with a grin and a leer. But Jesus witheringly adds that they know neither him nor his Father, meaning God. The Master seems to be in a provocative mood and draws the lines of cleavage very sharply between himself and the Pharisees in destiny, in origin, in spirit. He defiantly tells them that they shall die in their sins unless they believe in him. His language, that is in 8:24, is absolute. That "I am" and may be itself a claim to deity, though Jesus stoutly refuses to say the word Messiah to them or to explain further when they pointedly ask him, "Who art thou?" in verse 25. So in verse 24 he said, "Unless you believe that I am," the Greek says, "you will die in your sins." He does say that they shall come to know who he is when they have lifted him up on the cross, as many did at Pentecost and afterwards. Some of the Pharisees had been impressed by the tremendous claims of Jesus and expressed belief in him as the Messiah. But Jesus was suspicious of the Jerusalem Pharisees and proceeded to test the reality and sincerity of their faith. He wishes no disciples under false pretenses. The only real disciples are those who hold out and stand by the word of Jesus. Thus they will know the truth, and the truth will make them free. Nothing else liberates the spirit of man from the bondage of sin and the shackles of human prejudice. At once it is clear that these disciples are more Pharisee than Christian, for they resent the implication that they had ever been in bondage to any man, though at that moment they were under the political yoke of Rome and the still heavier religious yoke of the rabbis, in spite of their pride in being Abraham's seed. Jesus explains that they are in bondage to sin and repeats that the Son can set them free from that, although they, the Pharisees, were seeking to kill him. Clear proof that their father is not the same as his father. In spite of their plea that Abraham is their father, they do not act like it and do the works of their spiritual father. In a flash, they deny that they are the children of fornication, and as by implication Jesus is, for Jesus passed as the son of Joseph, begotten out of wedlock. They now claim God as their one Father in verse 41. Once more Jesus explains that their conduct shows that God is not their spiritual father, but on the contrary proves that the devil is their spiritual father. This was a terrific turn of the argument against these claimants of exclusive spiritual prerogatives as the children of Abraham. John the Baptist had called them broods of vipers, but this indictment was far worse. Jesus had practically also accused the Pharisees of being liars while asserting sinlessness for himself. The Pharisees hissed back the bitter words, Say we not well that thou art a Samaritan and hast a demon? The two meanest things that they can think of in their rage. But Jesus proceeds and claims to be able to prevent death, spiritual death of course, while the Jews accuse Jesus of claiming to be greater than Abraham and the prophets. That's verses 50 to 53. This is precisely what Jesus did claim. He must speak the truth about himself as God's own Son, else be silent, and so a liar like them. For Abraham rejoiced to see his day. The Jews are literalists, and at the final claim of Jesus to timeless and eternal existence before the day of Abraham, they take up stones to stone him as a common blasphemer. Jesus escaped, but the stinging memory of that day would not pass from the minds of the Pharisees. So here's the first of the two times that the Jewish leaders pick up stones to stone him. What had he said that was blasphemous? Well, he had said, before Abraham existed, I am. And the church, of course, believes that that is an explicit claim to deity by Christ. The other occasion, of course, is chapter 10, when he says, I and the Father are one. I'll put in a link to the 3-part video series we did on the deity of Christ in the early church. The church really struggled with what Jesus did claim and what to make of what he said, because sometimes what he said was ambiguous. We all, if we're coming from a cult background, kind of know that. A lot of what Jesus said was ambiguous and was misunderstood even by the disciples, let alone his enemies. So, in this section, Robertson obviously believes that Christ is discouraging the use of the word Christ about him. He's not claiming to be Messiah publicly. Why is that? Well, it's a politically loaded word, both in Jewish and Roman circles. But he makes an explicit claim to be the I am. So what do we make of that? I'll put in a link, therefore, to the deity of Christ in the early church. The church struggled with all of this for a long time. It's a 3-part video series. The first one is on your screen. See you soon.